The Philadelphia Eagles might be the beneficiary, the recipient of a pretty big mistake by the Green Bay Packers when they traded Dantavian Wixs and made some of their decisions about the way that the future wide receiver room would look there. I have to be honest, out of everybody that I've been watching the camp kind of reporting around, from going back to the spring in OTAs to basically what's happening now in training camp through joint practices, I think Dantavian Wixs may have been the most impressive of some of these kind of off-season additions that we've made to the Philadelphia Eagles roster. And he's stepping into some major freaking shoes to fill. When the Eagles subtracted A.J. Brown from their offense, most of us kind of came to the realization that it's technically Devontae Smith who's going to fill that role of A.J. Brown in the offense in terms of the target allocation. However, in terms of the physical role that A.J. used to play in terms of being primarily the isolation receiver, and of course other guys will fill in and they will rotate into the job from time to time, but all eyes were towards Dontayvion Wicks in terms of the actual role that A.J. played. While we can make a differentiation between the target allocation, sure. But here's the thing. As I'm sitting here and I'm trying to calculate what this Philadelphia Eagles offense is going to look like from a target allocation standpoint, I really have to make my mind up about really one important fact to begin the conversation. How many of these wide receivers are going to receive, on average, 4 targets or more inside of the offense? And that's a tough thing to decide upon because, number one, I think that there will be a true number 1 wide receiver with a crazy target load in Devontae Smith. I think it's going to cross into JSN territory from last year in terms of the total targets. But number 2, I have to also factor in the fact that maybe Sean Mannion is going to have a different philosophical approach to the remainder of the roster in terms of the way that they're going to manipulate this thing. And what I mean by saying that is this simply. If I'm sitting here and I'm calculating how many guys I think are going to average at least 4 targets per game, mind you, maybe one game they get 7 targets and the next game they only get like 1 or 2 targets. It's on the average is what I'm speaking about, guys. How many of these receiving targets are there going to be? And no matter how friendly I get, at the most friendly of friendlies in terms of what I can envision the offense, I'm going to say 5 guys. But in reality, my expectation is really about 4 guys. And just to delineate this line for you and what I'm talking about, I am talking about 60-plus targets on the actual 2026 NFL season. How many of these receiving threats are going to get 60 or more targets allocated to them? And I divided this up over a 16-game kind of workload because I'm an optimist. And I believe that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be resting people come week 18 or the 17th game of the season. It's not that I forgot we play 17 games, guys. All right, with that said, I just want to talk for a few seconds about Dantavian Wixs' training camp, and then I'm going to talk about what I think is going to happen in terms of the target allocation, those players that I think are going to warrant that kind of, that kind of workload, if you will. The release packages that I've been observing from Dantavian Wixs, especially through the joint practices, what I saw him doing, releasing off the line of scrimmage, I knew the young man was a better wide receiver than I think the average person across the NFL landscape understood. But I didn't know that the man could release the way he's been releasing off the line of scrimmage, what I saw going on down there in Green Bay. And I'll be honest with you, I do not put a lot of weight on one-on-ones and 7-on-7s in particular, because if you subtract the pass rush and we allow the quarterback, forever to stand in the pocket to throw the ball without a pass rush getting there, I mean, it's advantage offense. Like, what are we doing here? It's just probably not going to happen in game. You might have a handful of games throughout the course of an NFL season to where the play extends over like 4 freaking seconds. You can do that with pretty regular consistency on 7-on-7 and 1-on-1, so I'm cautioning. But what I did notice is in those things, I'm watching how quickly can you release off the line of scrimmage and how successful are you at turning those hips on that defender, on that defensive back. And I got to tell you, out of all the guys I was watching tape on, I thought Dontayvion Wicks was doing a hell of a job turning these corners around, making them look kind of foolish out there. I thought that young man definitely came out there and seized the moment, especially when you have 2 of the other big names that, are going to probably factor into the offense at some point in the season. Devontae Smith, there's no doubt about it, and he was sitting out, okay? But I'm more so referring to like Mekhi Lemon. At some point, Mekhi Lemon is going to factor into the offense. We just don't know how soon it'll be. It could be week 1, it could be week 7, it could be week 10. We don't know, but we know at some point in time when you spend a top 20 pick on a wide receiver, that person will absolutely factor into your offense at some point. And then we're just going to judge what basically happens at that point. Dantavian Wixs, to me, I think you can make a strong freaking case from the summer he had that we're not talking about, gathering 4 targets a freaking game, okay? We're not talking about him getting 64 targets on the year, in my opinion. The question I'm asking you is this now a legitimate number 2 wide receiver? Has he played himself into that kind of category? For this dude's going to get 90 plus. He's going to get 90 plus. You're going to see 6 to 7 targets a game going out to Dantavian Wixs on average. It's going to be somewhere around that marker. That this young man is going to have like that kind of production to where you're going to go, oh shit, no, this is a different, this guy's going to definitely deserve a certain target share that was different from maybe the original expectation that a lot of us, not everybody. I mean, I'm sure there were Dantavian Wicks truthers out there when we traded for him who thought from the jump the guy was going to be like a solid number 2 wide receiver. But I'll just say that reading the tea leaves, right? I knew that the young man could play football. I knew he could play at a high level. And I knew he was going to physically replace A.J. Brown's role, but I never thought from the target allocation that would be true. I definitely thought when they spent a top 20 pick on Mekhi Lemon, if anyone deserved the warranted label of the number 2 wide receiver in terms of the target share, it would be Mekhi Lemon eventually. Mekhi Lemon would be that guy that sneaks into the upper 80s, into the damn near just under 100 targets categories where I thought. Right now, I don't know that I would say that. I feel like, Mekhi Lemon's going to be that guy eventually. He's going to definitely factor into the offense, but because I think there will be a delay to his utilization in the offense, I think you're constantly giving Dantavian Wixs an opportunity to, at least on the 2026 season, factor into the offense in a way that we weren't anticipating before. And I think this young man has truly seized upon the opportunity. And I think he deserves a shit ton of credit for the way he's played this summer. And by the way, there are concerns with Dontayvion Wicks. Don't get it twisted, guys. This is a young man who is a physical guy. He is 6'2". He is right around that 210-pound threshold. This is a more physical receiver in the NFL. He's got, pretty much 10-inch hands. He's this big physical dude that can snag the football out of the air. But he also has showed you at times, he heard the footsteps from here and there, and you got to get on his ass a little about stuff like that. And then also, he will drop a pass or two that's going to frustrate you on the season, guys. I can tell you there's going to come a game where he's going to drop the ball just given the nature of his history. And we're going to be pissed as a fan base about the drop. That will happen. But I'm talking about the full context, guys, right? I'm not saying he's not going to have those moments where we're not going to get pissed. But I'm saying when we look at the full context, I think we're going to look back on this trade and go, damn, how he really did his thing with that trade. That was an incredibly important trade for the 2026 season. And although people got kind of hyped up around it because everyone kind of realized that probably wasn't the greatest of signs for A.J. Brown's future in Philadelphia, in the same breath, I don't think any of us were back then thinking oh yeah, 90, 100 targets. He's going to be utilized like that, a true number 2 wide receiver in this offense, right? I didn't see that coming. I got to be honest about things, man. I got to protect what I'm saying and what I saw from the tape and what I think the progression has been for this young man over the course of the summer. I just think that this young man has kind of developed into a player that other staffs are probably noticing this now. Damn, Dantavian Wicks might do something with that Eagles team, bro. That might be a better alignment there than what people think there. And when I say alignment, I don't mean physical alignment in the game. I'm not talking about 11 personnel guys. I'm talking about aligning to the goals of the offense, if you will. I really like what the potential could be for the Eagles receiving corps. And I don't know if they're going to carry 5 guys. I don't know if they're going to actually go forth and carry 6. A lot of arguments can be made that 6 receivers just isn't necessary because when it comes to active game days, you're probably only going to keep 4 guys normally active. Maybe you activate a 5th guy here and there if they have special teams value, but you're damn sure not activating 6 receivers on game days. So unless you're going to take a guy and stow him away and just keep teams away from claiming the guy, it doesn't make a lot of sense here. My feeling here is that probably Hollywood Brown or Elijah Moore are going to be tried to be packaged into some kind of a deal. It's going to be probably one or the 2 of those players. One of those guys is probably going to get moved. And you can make an argument for either way. I think Hollywood Brown has more value on the trade market. I think teams can overlook that Hollywood Brown didn't have the camp that maybe a lot of people suspected and say well, Hollywood Brown, he's a damn veteran receiver. He's going to be fine once they once the season starts and you need the guy to do the thing that you want him to do, you know you can get a certain level of production out of Hollywood Brown. Like, I don't think that that's going to deter his trade value. I don't think Elijah Moore's trade value, while I think he can take Hollywood Brown's role here on the Eagles and be fine, I don't think his trade value is the same as Hollywood Brown, to be honest. So, I mean, that's just my thought process on it. But what I'm looking at is that whether Hollywood Brown is on the team or not, guys, and I truly don't know. Don't take it out of the context I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm judging the roster, and it seems like something's got to happen here on the back end because we got 6 guys that should, maybe even a 7th guy, if you would, who should be on the roster. Maybe the Eagles do keep 6 on their initial 53 because they want Johnny Wilson, and they're going to put him on I don't know if they're going to IR him for X amount of time. He's got to be on the active 53 to IR him and then make him available for the course of the season. They could do some crazy shit like that on the initial 53. So there could be an initial 6 on the 53. But I'm talking about by the time we roll around the week 1, there's not going to be 6 active wide receivers probably on the roster. I would be shocked by that. You never say never, but I would be shocked, to be honest. So as I look at this, and I'm saying, who the hell are the guys who are going to get 60 or more targets on the season? Devontae Smith is a no-duh. Dallas Goedert, to me, is probably going to get more than 60 targets on the season, right? And then I look at the rest of the receiving core, and I'm like, okay, now it's a toss-up, because if Dantavian Wixs is what I'm saying, then I'm going to say that it's likely going to be essentially 100 and probably, I'd say 40-plus targets for a guy like Devontae Smith. And then I think you could see a guy like Makai Lemon kind of creep up in there into the high 80s, 90s in terms of your targets. Dantavian Wixs. And then Dallas Goedert's going to cross over that 60 threshold in terms of the targets. And I would say Makai Lemon at some point is going to be utilized. Those are the 4 that I feel comfortable saying. Those 4 guys are probably going to see 60 targets. And I'm going to subtract, you could probably take these numbers, crunch them down 10 more, make it 50 targets, and probably include a 5th guy in there in the being like Saquon and say, like, that's the 5 guys. That's like the weird kind of like, if you made this out into like a circle of the offensive identity of the Eagles, it's these 5 guys for the 2026 season with some very damn good role players who could have productive seasons, right? I don't think it's far-fetched for them to have those 5 guys I just mentioned with 50 or more targets and then have a 6th guy closing in on that kind of numbers, right? To where you got like Elijah Moore and you've got like, players behind them. Elijah Moore, I would say, Darius Cooper. I don't think it's unheard of those guys to be right around 40 targets, which if you think about 40 targets, that used to be what our 3rd wide receiver would get. So, like, because you were subtracting A.J. Brown from the offense, I do feel like there's going to be more of an allocation to how you replace his target load, right? I think Devontae's going to uptick in the amount of targets he gets. He's going to probably be 120 plus. I would say he's probably looking at like 140 targets, man, just given this offense. And then from the rest of them, I think you just divide up those other 100 and some targets, because that's only going to count for like probably 20, 30 targets of the 100 and some targets that AJ had on the year. So you got to, obviously a big share of that would then go to like what I'm saying here is Dontayvion Wicks, and then you got to categorize the rest of them, guys. And then we're also, obviously with the kind of numbers I'm producing to you is, I still think this is going to be a run-centric team, but I do expect there to be an expansion in terms of the amount of times we throw the ball over the course of the season, right? I'm probably going to say we're going to have 20 to 30 more passing attempts over the 2025 season on the 2026 season. And that's how I'm getting to those numbers to where I could have 2 guys in the 30, 40 target range that aren't even factoring into the conversation, and Darius Cooper and Elijah Moore, who are still damn good role players in this thing. And then I got my big 5, right? I got my 50 targets going to Saquon, right? I've got my 60 target guys being like, Dallas Goedert, and I've got it being, guys like Makai Lemon. Then we factor in the big 2 receivers, Dontayvion Wicks, and then, of course, obviously, Devontae Smith. I'm starting to really come around on Dontayvion Wicks being like a true factor. Like, I don't mean like a role player. I thought he was going to be more of a role player when we first got him here. I think he's going to be a factor-esque type player for the offense. I definitely think that this guy is going to be a young man that I would have said before, if he got over 500, receiving yards and had like, 60, 70 targets, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, this dude, he factored into the offense. This is what we wanted. I think now you're looking at a 700 plus yard season from him and probably 90 some targets. That's where I'm at with it. But here's the important question for you. Where are you at, guys? In the comment section down below, y'all tell me where you guys view this particular situation. All right, guys, with that said, I'm going to throw you up some videos over here. We're going to do some player evaluations and scheme stuff. So if you want to learn more about the Philadelphia Eagles, you want to see stuff broken down in a certain way, click your video over here or click this video over here. I'll give you 2 options to help entertain your day, so that way you can get pumped up and ready for the second preseason game. That will be tomorrow night. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention, guys. Peace. I'm out of here.